Hey folks, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. We're going to plant some herbs today. We're going to show you different ways to do it. So is it herb or is it herb? I guess it depends on where you're from. Around here, the H is usually silent, so we're planting herbs. I sometimes fall into saying it both ways, but yeah, man, you got to have herbs with your food. If you're gonna take the time to grow a garden and grow food, one of the best ways you can enhance your food experience, obviously, is with herbs to cook with. And man, they just make life so good. They also make good plants that you can plug in different nooks and crannies and spaces where you might not have something growing there, or you might have room under the canopy of your tomato plants to stick some basil or something. A lot of herbs make good companion plants if you're into companion planting. Basil is one of those that makes a good companion plant. These aromatics that make herbs what they are very good for certain purposes, like warding off certain kinds of pests or confusing pests who are coming to your tomatoes, or they're good for companion planting. So today I'm going to plant some herbs. Sometimes herbs are really easy, and sometimes herbs are difficult to get going, and sometimes they're just hard to grow, because and I think this is why. In our minds, in gardening, we think we get a little container and plant some herbs in a little cute container, and we'll have a little kitchen herb garden, and we'll grow chives and basil and things like that, and we'll grow them all together. And yeah, that can work. That takes some skill to do, though. The problem is growing in small containers. I see a lot of folks buying cute little ceramic dishes to put on their windowsill, or window boxes that are entirely too small to grow herbs. I've tried that before and met with limited success. I've also tried certain herbs that seem like they get off to a good start and then they die. So in my area, I've found that growing in larger containers and fertilizing with a liquid nitrogen type fertilizer like fish emulsion is the best way to get herbs to grow. You got to fertilize about every 2 weeks. You can do it a little bit, a little bit less than that, but you really want herbs to put on a lot of lush greenery, and nitrogen is good for that. Fish emulsion is good for that. If you're going to grow herbs in containers, they really need to be fertilized regularly. This is the kind of container I've grown in before. I bought this one today, and I need to drill some drainage holes in here. You want to have well-draining soil, and I usually just pot in regular potting soil. I find it real easy to grow herbs that are bought from the store, like these guys. This is rosemary. It's a Bonnie plant. It's ready to go in a pot, and it's got a good root system. It's a vigorous grower, but you don't have to buy them this way. You can start plants as seed. Rosemary is a little difficult to start from seed in my experience, so I like to just buy them like this. You can also propagate rosemary from cuttings real easy. It takes real easy, and so you can grow this stuff and always be into some rosemary. There are a lot of herbs that are annual herbs, and you grow them every year and they die off in the winter. And there's a lot of herbs like the rosemary, like oregano, like thyme, and like all the mint family that are perennials. That means they can survive a frost, they can survive a freeze, and they'll come back next year. In fact, let me show you some. These out. They're not the prettiest because they're just emerging. But these guys died back. This is a peppermint. I think that's a peppermint. And this is, and you can see that it's growing all the way through, taking over this thing. Peppermint will take over and colonize your garden. Don't plant peppermint in a container. I mean, in your garden. Always plant mint in a container, unless you just want that stuff to take over. This is my rosemary from last year. You can see that some of the woody stems are still there from last year. These were just twigs sticking out of the ground during the winter. Man, that smells good. This ugly mess down here is also a perennial. This is oregano, and we use a lot of oregano as well. And you can see the new growth is coming on. All this dead growth down here, I'll just leave that there, let it compost in place. Yeah, it's not the prettiest, but if you're trying to grow for pretty, that's kind of maybe a different process. But I'm growing so that I can actually make use of my herbs and spices. This is basil. All I did here is the same I did last year. I took a pot, just like a 12-inch pot like this. I filled it up with regular potting soil, not even seed starting mix, and I sprinkled basil seeds on top and just kind of mixed them into the top ½ inch of the soil, and I left it outside and waited, and now I've got basil coming up. This is the easiest way to grow basil, but it's also the slow way. If you need basil right away, you know, you could go buy it at the store and plant you a basil plant. Basil really loves the heat. Once the heat starts putting on, once the weather changes and it gets really hot, these plants will really take off. A little pot like this, what is that, about 2.5 gallons, maybe 3-gallon pot, 12-inch pot. I've got 2 thyme plants in here, English thyme and lemon thyme. We go through a lot of thyme, but that's the smallest I would use to grow thyme. Something like this needs a lot of root space. It is a perennial. I hope it'll come back next year, but that's the smallest I would grow for most herbs. Something like this down here. This is a 2-gallon pot here, and this parsley was planted last year. You can see the big taps down there, big tubers down there. And if you keep this stuff plucked of all its yellow leaves, and you pluck especially from the outside, this will grow just fine in a little bucket like that. Again, here's a Bonnie plant that I purchased a few weeks ago. This is Italian parsley, and there are 2 plants in here. Once again, this is the smallest I would go for herbs. That will help you be more successful. Hey Phoebe, what are you doing? Huh? This will help you be more successful. More soil is good for herbs. See that little guy? That is dill. I love dill. Again, I just sprinkled the seeds on the surface of regular potting soil, kind of mixed it in with my hand, and now I'm going to have dill that's starting to come up. So I'm going to show you the 2 different methods that I use for growing herbs. One of them is the simple method of buying them at the store and just potting them up. And I'm going to show you how I sow certain kinds of seeds. I've got a bunch of seeds, herb seeds here, and we're going to plant some today. But let's talk about containers. This is too small, in my opinion, for most herbs to be successful. This one I think would work. It's on the small side. Something like this is even better. This is what I like to use. This is about a 3-gallon pot, and fill that with potting soil and you're good. Something like this is also nice. You want this depth of soil. You want the roots to be able to move around in there and fill this whole depth of soil. All I have to do is drill some holes, so let's get that done. The beauty of having lots of holes is that the roots not only need to have drained soil, but you also want some air circulation down there near your roots. Soil life needs oxygen. All right. Now, these are cheap. You get them at Walmart or Home Depot, and they bow out when you fill them with soil. So if you're looking for a real pretty container, this bows out and looks kind of ugly. If that's not for you, be warned in advance. I'm going to put this rosemary and this thyme all in here, and we're going to pot them just like you would pot any other plant. I'm not using anything special, regular old potting soil. That ought to do. Now, I do like to put in a little bit of fertilizer. You can see that this kind of Dr. Earth is stuff I like. It's granulated. It's not soluble in water. What has to happen is that the bacteria in the soil work on this and release these nutrients that are bound up in this fertilizer. They release it, make it available to your plants over time. So this is a way to ensure that you have fertilizer available long-term in your soil. You're feeding the soil. What we'll do to fertilize our plants to get them going right away is we'll use a water-soluble fertilizer, a low-dose fertilizer. I find that fish emulsion, which is a 5:1:1 ratio, that 5 is the higher, that's the nitrogen, and that's what your plants need to really get leafy growth going, and that'll feed them right away. So I just worked this into the top part of the soil here. All right, let's put these in. I don't like these Bonnie tags, so I'm going to get rid of those. Just squeeze your plant, and you see there's already roots coming out here. These roots are brown and kind of dead, so I'll pluck those off. We're going to make a hole. I think I'll grow my rosemary on the outside. There we go. See that root system? It's bound up in there. This really needs to get going in a deeper soil bed. So just loosen those roots up a bit like that. Plop that right in at soil level. Work your soil around there. Now I'll compact this down after I'm finished planting. Put this other guy in over here. That's one of the best smelling plants in the whole garden. All right, I'm going to put my thyme right here. We have a roasted potato recipe that we enjoy in our household. And you can see I'm just plopping them right in there. And those roasted red potatoes with bell peppers and shallots and thyme, oh man, that's good eating right there. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buckets of roasting potatoes growing right now, with more potatoes on the way so that I can stagger my season. And hopefully we'll be able to provide some potatoes for our family for a while. But that's the simplest way to get some herbs. You can eat off of this right now. That's the simplest way to get some herbs for your garden, is just go buy some plants. But what if you don't have plants? I mean, these are $3. These 2 rosemaries were $3 each, and these were $2.50. That's a pack of seeds. And with a pack of seeds, you can grow, dozens and dozens of plants for the same price. But what's the downside? You have to wait. You have to germinate the seeds, and you have to wait. But I'll show you how to do that too. Here you can see I've started some chives in one of these little trays. These are just trays that I got when I bought some transplant flowers, and you can see some of them didn't come up. So I'm going to put some more chive seeds in here. I'm just going to sprinkle them on the top of the soil here and do just what you're seeing with my finger. Look how small that seed is. It's like a little rye seeds. So I'm just going to sprinkle these on the surface of these cells that didn't sprout much. And then you can either just kind of grind them into the surface like so, or you can take a little bit of seed starting mix and cover them up like so. Either way. It goes without saying, I hope you understand, when you're starting seeds, you need to water these in really well, because that water needs to penetrate the seed shell and wake up that embryo in there so that it can germinate. So we'll water these really well, and I'm just germinating these outside. These all came up outdoors, no hardening off, no lights, none of that stuff. It's warm enough right now here where these should sprout just fine. So those are done, and I've already got them labeled so I know what they are. Cilantro. It says they take a little bit of cool weather to start. This is going to be a mild week for us. It says they sprout in 7 to 10 days, the temperature between 60 and 80, and that's what we're going to have this next week or two. So it's a perfect time for planting this stuff. Cilantro becomes coriander when it goes to seed, and the plant spacing, I've never found a need to space anything. I just plant a whole pack of seeds in something like this, because we're going to eat the whole bunch. We're going to harvest this in bunches. So again, I'm just going to sprinkle these seeds, these coriander seeds, over the surface, and then just mix them in a little bit. I'll take a handful of potting soil and just dust it over the top, water this in real quick, and we're going to have cilantro. That's how easy it is to plant seeds. Also, Sharpies, let me ask you, Sharpies always fade. You really only get about 3 or 4 months before a Sharpie fades and you can't read it. Do you know of a pen that is specifically made for gardeners that you can write on your labels and it doesn't fade? Let me know in the comments. I'd really like to buy one. You'll want to water them in really good. Really more than you think you should, because you want that water to soak down and really make contact, settle that soil in to make contact with your seedlings. So now we've got our herbs planted. What do? We just sit around and wait till they come up. Keep them watered, keep the soil moist, and once they start coming up and put on their first sets of true leaves, then you can start giving them a very low dose liquid fertilizer. I suggest fish emulsion, but make sure that that's a low dose. You don't want to burn those plants, and just follow the instructions on the packet. And that's one of the keys to growing potted plants outdoors, especially herbs and delicate plants and things like that, is you got to fertilize them on a regular basis. That's what we often fail to do, and we wonder, well, why does my basil want to bolt and go to seed? Bolting and going to seed are a response to two things: stress or the weather. and that weather that's coming is actually a form of stress on the plant. So when a plant feels stressed, like it's not getting enough nutrition, and the plant doesn't think, but for practical purposes, the plant thinks it's going to die. The plant then rushes to complete its life cycle, which means it goes to seed. And when a herb goes to seed, it usually tastes different. Basil gets skunky. Other plants start to lose their flavor because it's putting all of its energy into going to seed. So water and fertilize your herbs on a regular basis and you should be fine. Hey, thanks for joining us on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening today. It's been such a joy to garden with you all and to talk in the comment section. And I've really enjoyed getting to know some of you. And so really, thanks for commenting. I really appreciate it. Hey, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. We really appreciate that. And happy gardening to you. Bye-bye.